Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Progress Kentucky's Kernels of Truth. And folks, we've got a wonderful show for you this evening. I'm really excited about it. First, we're going to do a quick news of the week covering the big news from last week, which was that John Yarmuth, of course, is retiring from politics. We're going to get into that and the political fallout and some concerns about that announcement for us here, progressives here in Kentucky. We are then going to do the news under twos or something like that. Kimberly's going to run us through a handful of stories that we think are important. We're going to do them relatively quickly so that we can get to our guests. We have a very fantastic special guest this evening, Jason Bailey, the founder and executive director of the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, kind of the go-to folks to run the numbers and to assess how policy will affect our commonwealth. They're a non-partisan, non-political policy shop, and we're really fortunate to have them to talk with us about what the Build Back Better agenda could do for Kentucky. Instead of talking about just numbers, let's talk about actual policies and its impact on our people. And then, of course, we'll move on to our call to action and events calendar with a really exciting special event coming up. So all things that we want to share with you here, friends in Kentucky. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? I know you are. I know you are just as sick as I am of the current political landscape in our Commonwealth. And you know what? We've got some work to do if we are going to beat back the tide of bad politics and policy from Frankfurt. From efforts to completely outlaw abortion to absolute resistance to combating climate change, we need help to stand effectively against the GOP super duper majority. And if you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, join Progress Kentucky. We've made it really easy. You don't have to give us a bunch of money to be a member. Just follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you spend time on social media. If you like what we're doing, like and share it, make comments, all that stuff to juice the algorithm. And if you like what you're hearing here on Kernels of Truth, please give us a thumbs up, leave us a review, or share out our show. Really excited, though, to check in with our amazing co-host this evening. And we're, of course, tell you who we are, where we are, and what our protest sign says today. Because, of course, folks, this is not talking heads on the internet. This is a digital demonstration for a better Kentucky. So you don't show up to a demonstration without your protest sign. What does your protest sign say today? My name is Aaron. I am coming to you from Childsburg, a community just next to that growth boundary here in Lexington. It is a oasis, really, and you can't get to actual Lexington by bicycle there. That's my current gripe and pet peeve, because today's a beautiful day to ride a bike. Certainly could have ride it downtown, because that's taking your life in your hands. Get it together, Lexington. That's not my protest sign, though. My protest sign says Kentucky deserves a Commonwealth that works for all of us, and policy is key. All right, that's me. That's my protest sign. I'm now going to turn to Kimberly, the lovely Kimberly, the star Kimberly.
Thank you. And I'm Kimberly Cecil Jones, and I'm coming to you live from the best city in Kentucky. That would be Louisville. And I just thought I'd wear these fly shades today because I never get to go to anywhere to wear them. But seriously, my protest sign says today, Congress, you work for us. That's at the state level and the federal level. Congress, you work for us. How'd you like that, Aaron?
You have amazing handwriting. I'm just gonna
Thank
say
you.
you've gone deep. You've actually got things professionally printed. When Kimberly brings a sign, it's no joke, and I cannot argue with that message. That is a fantastic message. I just wish more members of Congress remembered that. All right, let's turn to our buddy over in Frankfurt, Nate.
Hey gang, it's Nate Orshan here in Kitson, my home in South Frankfort, Kentucky. And today I would need a very big piece of paper to have my sign. So you have to just sort of imagine it in your mind. It says, democracy needs better metrics, starting with an increasing number of progressive politicians.
I like that. Metrics and increase. I feel like you could put some sort of graph up there that would be help,
Ooh, I'll get right on that.
Share that. Yeah, totally. Get it professionally printed and come and see us next week to match up against Kimberly's amazing sign game. All right, so we're gonna do news of the week now, and we've got a few stories to touch on. One to do kind of deeply, and a bunch to do a little more quickly. The goal here, folks, I'm gonna clue you in, loyal listener and viewer. We're gonna try to get this show done in under an hour. It's been a goal. We rarely accomplish it, but this time we're going to work hard. So I'm going to stop talking about our goals and start talking about the news. All right. So the big story that we touched on briefly last week, but I really did want to circle back to it because I think there's a lot of elements to it. Is that 3rd District Congressman and Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth will not be seeking re-election after 15 years in Congress. That's a long time to be in Congress. I love the reasons that he has shared, which is that he wants to spend more time with his family, specifically his incredibly cute grandson. And I buy it. I think that's legit. But I do think that there's big political waves coming after this announcement, right? So this is a district, the third district. He's been there for 15 years, but before that, it was for a very long time held by Ann Northrup, a kind of moderate Republican, the kind they used to have. Now they don't really have these types of Republicans very much, but for the longest time, Democrats kept trying and then kind of wrote it off for a while because it was just impossible to win. Right now, the Cook Political Report, which of course is a nonpartisan political entity, they say it's a Democrat plus 8 seat. So it is not, it's not an overwhelming seat. And there's some pretty scary stuff that has been floating around here, right? Because okay, Democrat plus 8 seat is pretty safe. Not a lock necessarily, and some major political tides could, shift that. Bad candidates and bad politics or something. And this will be a midterm election, which of course is traditionally not ever good for the party in power. So there's a lot of Democrats who are kind of just, gritting their teeth and hoping to survive the midterm elections in 2022. But if you look at this map, this is a map that Dave Wasserman, also from the Cook Political Report, put together. This is a way you could crack Louisville and redistrict it to the point that these are all Trump plus 20 districts. So the GOP super duper majority in Frankfurt would have to be, pretty aggressive to undertake this. And if you look at the quotes from the Republican leadership, they seem to be showing a little bit more restraint. But really, is this crew known for their restraint? Is this a crew that's known for like, hey, I know we could do this politically, but it just wouldn't be right, so let's not do it? No, that's not the way they roll. They roll with like, let's use everything, every tool in our toolbox to take control. And that's what, GOP generally like to do. Exhibit A being today's vote in the Senate on the Freedom to Vote Act, which of course was Joe Manchin's big negotiated compromise voting freedom bill, which of course did not get past a Republican filibuster. So these guys, they like to talk about democracy, but they don't really like to practice it. So I'm pretty certain that redistricting is a very big question mark and could have significant impact on what's going on with this district. So, okay, but who's in the running? Obviously, we know Attica Scott, was in since July. She's been running against, thought she was going to run against John Yarmuth, was happy to, primary him, and in a trend that we've been seeing with, lots of primary challenges to pretty, progressive politicians. And I was excited for it. I'm happy. More democracy, please. Let's have more democracy. And then as soon as Yarmuth announced, Morgan McGarvey, the individual on the right there, Senate Minority Leader, jumped into the race, like immediately jumped into the race. So it's very clear that John Yarmuth called McGarvey. I think he said it on the record, but gave him a heads up that this is what he was thinking to do. And McGarvey leapt on the opportunity, lined up some folks who would endorse him, immediately lined up all his social media assets, lined up his fundraising appeals, which I think that's how I learned about my Yarmuth's retirement, was an email from Morgan McGarvey asking for money for him to challenge for this seat. So it's like, what's that? That's, to me, that's not a great look, that Yarmuth was didn't tell Attica Scott, but told Morgan McGarvey. But I guess that's who in politics. I also thought that Yarmuth's comments about Attica Scott weren't necessarily the kind of full-throated endorsement of, may the best candidate win kind of situation. But, that's his call. It's his politics to manage. But I do think that it's a big story. It's something to watch. And clearly, if Democrats do lose that seat, we'll have no one in the DC delegation to kind of represent our values in Washington DC, because all the other races are super tight. And I don't want to quash anyone's hopes, but it seems unlikely that any of the other seats will flip. But that's me. What do you guys think?
Well, I think actually that we still don't know at this particular time if his son is going to be running. Sources are telling me, Aaron, that there's a big possibility that Aaron Yarmuth will run for his father's seat. A lot of people did not even know that the Leo Weekly, which the publication is here in Louisville, Kentucky, that Congressman Yarmuth had the helm for many, many years. That's how I met him and was a pest to him when I was in the hip hop industry, to put my artist in his paper. However, sources are telling me within the next week or two, we will know for certain if Aaron Yarmuth is going to be running as well. And how can we say what Congressman Yarmuth did? Actually, we don't know who he talked to or why he talked to whom he did. But I do know that here in Jefferson County, Morgan McGarvey is a favorite.
Yeah, and I've got nothing against, he's been on the show, Attic's been on the show. I think they're both great. I think they're both honest to God progressive leaders who are working really hard for our state. And as I said before, I'm excited for more democracy. Everyone who's interested, throw your hat in the ring and let's see, let the best candidate win for sure. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, well, assuming that with the redistricting that's supposed to be happening this year, that they don't do anything too funky with that district, I'm at least heartened that it's probably still going to remain in the Democratic fold, and so then we have this wonderful situation where, it's sort of an embarrassment of riches, right? I mean, I'm big fans of both Representative Scott and Senator McGarvey. And I think either of them would represent the district wonderfully. Just a last little point. I was reading a story in the Courier-Journal today about the pernicious effect of magnet schools in Jefferson County, as far as sort of becoming sort of de facto weakeners of other public schools. And I noted that both Representative Scott and Senator McGarvey were graduates of DuPont Manual, a very storied magnet school in Louisville. So I'm not sure. I guess no matter what, it's going to be a good year for DuPont Manual. So that's it.
What I think there's another been rumblings of other potential candidates jumping in. Again, it's a pretty, it's a prize certainly to be won. I think if I recall correctly, when we did have Chairman Yarmuth on the show, he did talk about how it's a lot more fun to be in power in the House of Representatives. I think that's one wrinkle here, is that there are a number of different politicians who seem to be getting out while they're on top, right? So he was in the minority for a while. He got in the majority, got the chairmanship of a very important committee that that let him actually shepherd through the American Rescue Plan. So an enormous investment in our nation and in our commonwealth. The money of which is still being kind of dispersed, and cities and states are just determining how best to use that that stimulus from COVID that was so far was the Biden administration's crowning achievement so far. I think we'll talk with our guest about some elements of that I think are still being sorted out in terms of what the American Rescue Plan will fund, and how that will impact our state. But yeah, it's interesting that there are a lot of national takes right now that are about Yarmuth is like a number of folks who are retiring rather than have much of a have a primary, which is not a lot of fun necessarily, and B, returning to a House in which they're the minority, because there's a lot of predictions that the House will flip due to redistricting and just the political prevailing winds. Who knows? We're not making predictions. I don't know that John Yarmuth was making predictions, but I got to imagine all those things had some role, even if the number one motivation was the grandkid, because again, really cute kid. So all right, we're now going to move on to the news in under 2 minutes. So Kimberly Cecil Jones,
I have one thing that I would like to say very quickly on the last story about Congressman John Yarmuth. One of the other things that he pointed out is that he would be in his mid to late 70s. And he's been a big proponent about let's have some structure here and let's have some time limits. He most definitely doesn't want to be a Mitch McConnell or anyone else that's been in there since before, I was born. Sort of.
Is that accurate, Kimberly? I mean, I'm not going to look for a birth certificate, but I don't know that's quite accurate. But yes, I do think that there are a lot of differences between John Yarmuth and Mitch McConnell. One is that Yarmuth knows when to say when. Yarmuth also has grandkids that he wants to spend time with, and grandkids that want to spend time with him. My hunch is that that's not the case for Mitch McConnell. I don't know, just a guess, going out on a limb. But also, an unbridled lust for power doesn't seem like Yarmuth's number one driving principle. So good guy, appreciate his work for sure. And I think it'll be really interesting to watch this race play out for sure. All right, Kimberly, are we gonna start the clock? We're counting you down.
Oh, you're counting me down today. Okay, I need to change to news in threes, perhaps, because there is big news always going on in the state of Kentucky. But first of all, I want to say RIH to the passing and the great Colin Powell. He made a lot of mistakes. Yes, he was human, but in the end, he really stood up to the plate. And as my grandmother used to always say, it doesn't matter how you start, but it definitely matters how you end. And he definitely was against Trump and said that Trump and many others were a part of the riot on January the 6th. But let's get down to Kentucky politics. Right now, groups are suing over arbitrary voting rights and the restoration process. Right now in Kentucky, there's over 200,000 Kentuckians that can't vote. They are felons, although 127,000 have finished their complete full sentences. We do know that Andy Beshear, one of the first things he did when he came into office was to do the executive order so that many of our felons would be able to vote. But we still have some hijacking as far as that's concerned. Also, Blacks are disenfranchised at a rate of 4 times higher than other racial communities combined. Now, also, Beshear relaunches the state healthcare site Connect, which is KYNECT. Enrollment begins on November the 1st. If we remember and go back a little bit in history, his dad, who was Governor Steve Beshear, received glowing reports, and Kentucky was number one in getting people to sign up for healthcare through the Connect website, getting the best deals. You were able to shop. It was like a marketplace. So Andy Beshear is bringing that back to bring Kentucky back to its glory days, that everyone has health care. So we're very happy about that. And you have choices, ladies and gentlemen, you do. Also, Kentucky security crisis depends as lawmakers continue to reject funding increases. Now, at this particular point, we know that Governor Beshear will be asking legislators to increase funding for our struggling child protection services. Right now, we have Kentucky social workers. We're minus 600 people that we are needed, which is really strikingly horrific because right now, Kentucky has the highest child abuse case rate in the country, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So at this particular time, it is affecting the child protection services right here in Kentucky. Also, just bringing up that Kentucky lawmakers work to expand the state unemployment system for survivors of domestic abuse. So right now that Nina Kakarian, yes, Representative Nina Kakarian plans to introduce this next month in Frankfurt. And also, ladies and gentlemen, remember that this month, October, is National Domestic Awareness Month. Back to you, Aaron.
That was definitely over 2 minutes. But really exciting to hear that kind of roundup of news. Definitely interesting to see a group suing Andy Beshear over the voting rights restoration process, because that's one of the things he's most proud of, is that he restored voting rights for a bunch of formerly incarcerated individuals. But clearly it is a bit of an arbitrary process if it requires the governor to do it. So the state deserves better than, waiting on a governor to, restore people's voting rights. Anyway, so that was the news of the week. Anything that you wanted to weigh in on, Nate, before we move on?
No, except to say that I'm a fan of short news clips, and I think we pulled that off with efficiency and aplomb.
Plum. It's not even plum season.
Thank you, Nate. You are so wonderful. Thank you so much. But we're going to change it, I think, to news in threes so that I could be
creepy.
I'm
It'll
trying
be
my
news in
best.
fours, news in fives, news in
No,
26
news
minutes.
in threes.
All right. I didn't even have a timer on, just to be clear. I don't really know. We'll run the tape later. All right, so we are going to be speaking soon with Jason Bailey, the leader of the go-to group for analysis of how policies in our commonwealth serve or fail our people. This is the guy that is referenced constantly in the media. If you are looking at a story that talks about policy and how it impacts us, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, even very likely you'll see his name, and we're really fortunate to have him with us. So let's go ahead and into the interview with Jason Bailey. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing great. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So I did want to just underscore again, you are a nonpartisan organization. The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy is not a political entity so much as is a nonpartisan policy analysis center. And so thank you for being with us, the hoi polloi here, who actually want to see politicians elected based on their policy and their politics. But we've seen coverage about this Build Back Better agenda going back for months now. It's if you follow media like I do, it's this fever pitch of make or break moment for Democrats and whether Biden's going to be at all successful in his first term, and the numbers that are thrown around, and it's like Manchin wants this number and Kristen Sinema, who knows what she wants, and then Pramila Jayapal wants this number. And it seems like the focus of the media attention on the Build Back Better agenda is just on the number and whether they're going to trade enough horses to get something across the finish line. We wanted to have you on to actually talk about what the policy would do, because it's not about I'm not going to pay $1 trillion, and they talk about it in these $1 trillion. They don't talk about how it's paid for, or the fact the actual number of what we will have to pay as taxpayers, or what it does to the budget. Could very well be zero, because it's actually paid for by tax increases on the wealthy, theoretically, because it's all theoretical because nothing's actually passed yet. But in terms of the policy that we've seen, the stuff that's been shared, either the Ways and Means Committee or others, as they're kind of making the sausage and stuff's coming out, and the Biden administration itself, what it says they want to do, where do you see the biggest gains for our Commonwealth, Jason, in the Build Back Better agenda?
Yeah, well, and you're absolutely right. I think the media has done a terrible job covering this entire issue. It's all about the horse race and about the negotiations and about the top line number, and not about what's actually in the bill, which is a lot different if you remember the debate about the Affordable Care Act 10 years ago, whether we were talking about public option or no public option. We were talking about different, kind of wonky ideas about how we restructure the healthcare system. There's just nothing about this. And the Kentucky media has been completely dark about the issue, not doing anything to help explain it. So it's been a real disappointment. But if you look under the hood of the proposal as originally laid out, and again, we should talk about how that's changing as we go through the negotiation process. There are really, landmark proposals here in terms of how we structure our economy, in terms of the costs and the families face, in terms of how we deal with, existential challenges like climate change. Really, a kind of a whole suite of policies that affect everything from childcare to preschool to higher education, that would have a huge impact on the lives of every Kentuckian in one way or another. And so, we should get into some specifics about that, because I think that the details matter. And once people hear about the details, I think they like a lot of what they hear.
Yep. So let's dive in a little bit. So in terms of childcare, me as you might hear my kids at some point tonight. It happens. Childcare is really important to being able to go to work. And the state of our childcare in our Commonwealth, and I think across the country, is abysmal. The costs are high. The people who are in the industry don't make any money. How does this work? It's like you're paying a massive amount of money to make sure your kids are cared for and are engaged and are educated at some level. And the people who are doing that work aren't compensated well. So it is this kind of, how do we live as a society without an investment in childcare? What does the Build Back Better agenda do for that?
So there's a couple of things. I mean, one of the child care proposal and the preschool proposal are obviously very connected. So we should talk about them together. It all has to do with what kids are doing before they get to kindergarten age. The proposal includes universal preschool. So for all 3 and 4 year olds, there would be free universal preschool. Could be provided through schools, through child care centers, through Head Start agencies and other places, but it is absolutely free and universal preschool. And then wrapped around that, for younger children, there are significant subsidies for the cost of childcare. And in Kentucky, half of Kentuckians live in a childcare desert. The number of childcare centers has collapsed over the last 10 years as the state has cut funding for childcare. And as you say, childcare is incredibly unaffordable, and the wages are terrible, even for a job that we know provides such an essential service to the parents and to the children. So there's a lot of money to raise the wages of childcare workers, so that they are able to provide a living wage and beyond, and to provide a subsidy that would cap the cost of childcare at no more than 7% of a family income. That would be the top, and it would go down to to free childcare for those who are below a certain income level. So anywhere from 0 to 7% would be all that families would pay. And that's far lower. Anybody who has young kids knows that's far lower than what we would pay now. So we would be, if the bills that originally proposed are passed, we're talking about some really landmark improvements in terms of access to affordable childcare and preschool.
That's wonderful. And now, what about healthcare? I know that's certainly something that's being discussed as well, and I'm sure that there's some kind of horse trading happening on the healthcare benefits. But what are the kind of biggest ticket items in terms of healthcare, and what will it mean for Kentucky?
Yeah, so there's several things in the healthcare arena. I mean, there's expansion of Medicare benefits to include dental and vision coverage that has not been part of the Medicare package before. So it's incredibly important. For elderly Kentuckians, an increasing number of Kentuckians who are Medicare eligible. There's also an extension of what we've been doing under the American Rescue Plan, which is to really subsidize even more so the cost of healthcare on the Health Insurance Exchange, or Connect, which was recently relaunched in Kentucky. So a lot more in subsidies to make that more affordable for the people who buy insurance on the exchange. And so that would be a big benefit for those folks as well. And there's also, this is not a Kentucky issue. There's also proposals around allowing negotiations around prescription drug prices in Medicare. Don't know if that will make it in the final bill, but that's been on the table, and that's obviously a very important benefit as you look at the cost of drugs for those who are Medicare eligible. And a final piece that wouldn't be Kentucky specific, but for those 12 states, including most all of the South that have not yet expanded Medicaid as we did under the Affordable Care Act, it would close the loop for those states. So Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, states that have really high levels of uninsurance those folks would be able to get health care for the first time.
Excellent. One final question I wanted to issue I wanted to touch on, and then I'll throw it over to my co-host. So for me, again, as a father, one of the issues that has me just up at night is our climate change and the crisis that we're facing, the crisis that we're confronted with. I do think the fact that the Democrats put a coal state senator in charge of the Natural Resources Committee seems like a bad idea. Joe Manchin has demanded a lot of attention, and he's demanded a lot out of this, changes to this bill. And in fact, I think his demands on throttling back any of the clean energy, certainly any of the sticks. He seems to be okay with the carrots, but any sticks for coal are a big red flag for him. Which you've actually got international corporations like BP and Shell saying that he's going too far. Oil companies saying he's going too far. But I guess he's certainly taking care of coal's interests, or at least his own financial interests. But what I do know is that this is our shot. Right. So I know you don't want to talk about the politics of it, but I have to. Right. This is our shot at getting something transformational that is commensurate with the problem, which is enormous. We know that, looking at the political landscape, it seems highly unlikely that the House stays in Democratic control. The Senate seems a little bit, more likely. But what that means is, you're not going to get bills to the White House, Joe Biden's desk, that are going to be transformational in terms of addressing the climate crisis after the midterms. And because we have one party here in the United States of America that doesn't believe that climate change is something that they actually have to deal with. I honestly do not know how Joe Manchin looks his grandkids in the eye. I don't know how, I don't think Mitch looks at his kids. I don't think he sees his grandkids, but how Republicans have a part of their tenet and the gospel of their party is that they don't do anything useful on climate change. So this is our one shot to do something for the foreseeable future. Of course, the other piece that I think is significant here is that the International Climate Change Conference is happening in Scotland, I believe. And it's happening starting in November 1st. So we're not going to have any ability to lead if we have not given Joe Biden and his administration, some clear guidance from Congress that we want to do something on climate change. So how do you lead an international effort when, he can't get anything done? So, those are the kind of the political ramifications I think are scary and significant. But what is currently, and I know you're not, behind the scenes negotiating. So, but what's your current understanding of what's going on in climate change and the Build Back Better bill?
Well, that what was originally in there is being cut back. In particular, that there's probably the most important part climate related was a series of payments and penalties for utilities to shift to clean energy and renewable energy sources, and that is rumored to be either severely weakened or taken out of the bill, and that would leave still a lot of what would be left were a lot of tax credits and incentives. There's funding for things like building electric vehicle charging station infrastructure, providing tax credits for people who purchase electric vehicles, which, by the way, in Kentucky, we should be very concerned about that. If we want to see those 5,000 jobs materialize in E-Town, we're going to have a market for electric vehicles. And to have a market, you're going to have the infrastructure of charging stations, and they're going to have to be affordable for people who buy these cars. So that's an extremely important part of just short-term economically in Kentucky, not to mention the bigger and long-term more important issue of addressing climate change. So, I don't think there's enough in there on climate, and I think it's getting smaller, and that's very concerning. And so I think we're all, hoping that, as much as possible gets in there, and then the Biden administration can figure out what it can do administratively to accelerate the shift. But we're, it's a part that's really concerning.
Yep. And I do think the Clean Energy Payment Program, or the CEPP, was the kind of big piece that was going to help ratchet down emissions from the generation sector. And the other thing you mentioned, Jason, of course, was the transportation sector, which is another big, huge chunk of our climate emissions here in our country. If you transition to EVs, that's great. You were going to get an inherent advantage. You're going to decrease emissions, cut out the transportation emissions. But if you aren't transitioning your power grid to renewable energy, there's a finite amount of gains you're able to make if you've just changed from an internal combustion engine to a Tesla charged off of a coal-fired power plant, right? That's Thomas Massey's kind of dream, I suppose. So at any rate, this is, I think, a really interesting conversation, and I'd like to invite our co-host to ask a few questions too. I know there's some stuff they've been thinking about in terms of our policies, but before we go, I do also want to hear what's your current take on what's happening with the very significant surplus we have, mostly I think linked to the American Rescue Plan and the resources that have been delivered to the states. So let's put a pin in that question. I'm going to throw it over to our to our co-host to ask a question. Kimberly, you have a question for Jason?
I sure do. How are you doing, Mr. Bailey?
Kimberly.
My question is, here in Kentucky, we're very, very low on the totem pole when it comes to education. I can't remember. I should have looked it up. I think we were like number 47 or number 48 in the nation. However, we talked about DuPont Manual earlier. That's one of the stellar schools in Kentucky with the national accreditation, as well as Sacred Heart Academy. What's in the bill that's going to build education up better for Kentucky so that people can get these jobs? I know that several companies would like to move here, have bases here like Microsoft and Google and things of this nature, but we just don't have enough people in this state that are qualified to fulfill these positions. Is there anything in the bill that addresses that, and how would that affect Kentucky?
Yeah, there are significant education pieces, both in the early childhood area and in the higher education area. So early childhood, I talked about, universal preschool and expanded child care, as well as expanded paid family leave, are all about trying to target those early years of a child's life, which we know are so important to their educational attainment, their eventual employment outcomes, and basically their well-being later in life. And we haven't been, as a state, we haven't even been funding full-day kindergarten, much less universal preschool. So that's an incredibly important piece of it. Well, the higher education part, at least in the original proposal, and there's some rumors that this has now been taken out in negotiations with Senators Manchin and Sinema, there was an element of free community college. So basically universal free tuition, zero tuition community college across the state, plus an increase in Pell Grants, which then can be used to cover the cost of attendance outside of tuition for people who are attending that. And we know that that's incredibly important, that, both for the educational attainment, but also for just the growing problem of student loan debt. There's over $20 billion in student loan debt in Kentucky. And that is a drag on our entire economy as people, spend years paying that off, and it keeps them from starting a business, from buying a home, from saving for retirement or for their own kids' education. So on those two areas, there's also some money, I should say, for school construction, which we desperately need in the state. We have a two-tier system of schools where there are some places that have really incredible schools and others that are where the school buildings are crumbling. And to provide a safe and good learning environment for kids, we have to put money into new school buildings and put people to work in the process. So that's also part of the proposal.
And also, Mr. Bailey, in the Build Back Better bill, I know that it was a lot of talk about making sure that there was internet service all across the country so that people can have that freedom to have internet service. And it just behooves me that there are a lot of parts of Kentucky that don't have any internet service. So when kids need to do work or adults need to do things for a job or whatever the case may be, there is no internet service. So how would that be for Kentucky in this bill?
Yeah, so the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which would be passed alongside Build Back Better, includes significant dollars for investment in last mile broadband connections, and that's on on top of money that we've gotten from the American Rescue Plan Act for broadband as well. So it would be a very large acceleration of our investment in broadband, of getting that to people's homes, get it in a more affordable manner. And we need to treat this like we did, access to electricity during the New Deal, or access to water. It's as important if in this day and time that people have that pipeline of basic information. We learned that to an incredible degree over the last year when kids have had to be learning from home. So a huge amount of money would go out to allow parts of the state that don't have that access to get it.
Is this bill going to pass? This is my last question. Do you think it's going to pass? I mean, like, one day I think it is, and then the next day I'm like, I have no idea.
It's a really up and down process, and it's really hard to predict. If you look at what the conversations are right now, they seem to be moving toward a number around 1.7 to 1.9 trillion dollars, which is significantly reduced from the 3.5. That means a lot of things are going out, and that's very disappointing. At the same time, it would be even more disappointing if we got absolutely nothing and the talks collapsed. So, the hope is that there is some talk that by the end of the week or next week, by the 31st, perhaps there would be an agreement. But we just don't know. I mean, I think there are certainly individuals involved in this that are being a little more than a little inscrutable. And so until we know what they want, we're not going to be able to nail it down.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, Nate, you've got a question for Jason.
Yeah, thanks. So to bring a little Jimmy Buffett into the conversation from his famous song Fruitcakes, I'll paraphrase one of the lines from the song. He's talking about relationships. I'll use the word metrics. We all got them. We all want them. What do we do with them? So the classic economic metric that a mediocre politician seems to focus on is jobs. And, as we know, a job is very little relationship to whether the person who has that job can actually, afford to live. So what I'm wondering about is what other metrics you would recommend that we Kentuckians focus on and that we should try to hold our political leaders to account for?
Yeah. Well, jobs aren't the only thing that matter for sure. Although I do have to say that, there are a lot of jobs in policies that help people. I mean, in the Build Back Better plan, the estimate is for 4 million jobs nationwide in the care sector, in the energy sector, in infrastructure, and in other areas. So there are a lot of jobs to be had in doing the right thing. But obviously, we want to look at more jobs. We want to look at the quality of jobs, which has been a major problem when we've had stagnant wages for several decades. We're in the longest period now without an increase in the minimum wage. We've seen a severe decline in unionization. All those things reduce job quality. So, the goal should be not just to have people working. At one point in this country, we had children working. That's not a direction we want to go in, right? We want people to work with good jobs and with benefits. We also want life expectancy. We want quality of life. Life expectancy has declined for several years in a row in Kentucky. Certain populations, especially non-college educated folks, have seen a decline in their life expectancy. So health matters. We want our indicators to turn around, where we're in the bottom of lists for things like cancer, diabetes, heart disease. All those things are economic development. If we truly care about that, we should care about our poverty rate. About 1 in 5 kids in Kentucky lives in poverty. That's a shame. That's actually, in the richest country on earth, it shouldn't be happening. And it's actually very easy to solve. And the Build Back Better plan actually goes a long way toward that with things like the child tax credit, which in Kentucky, as it's in place now, and if it can be made permanent, is cutting child poverty nearly in half.
So just a million reasons that, the Build Back Better bill as part of this whole package will benefit Kentucky. Our Commonwealth will gain if the programs as they're currently envisioned pass, and it certainly pass at a level in the conversation they're talking about $3.5 trillion, but what that actually does for our state is almost hard to measure, because it's just such an investment in our people. And of course, our two senators will not do anything but try to block this legislation from passing. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But I do know that some stuff did get done early in the Biden administration. The American Rescue Plan went through. John Yarmuth, as he said, kind of one of his crowning achievements as Budget Committee chair. I actually saw, I think, a photo of a press conference, Jason, with you and Chairman Yarmuth talking about the benefit of that bill. So what are we looking at right now? We've got this historic surplus at our state level in our budget. What are we doing with that? What should we do with that?
Yeah, so the American Rescue Plan has really made a huge difference through a very difficult period. And one of the ways it's done that is, as people have spent their stimulus checks and their expanded unemployment benefits and other things, it's generated state tax revenue. And so, since 2008, since the Great Recession hit, we've been cutting our state budget through round after round of reductions, 19 rounds of budget cuts. And so core functions of government have been shrunk and are not able to in many cases do what we need to do to keep ourselves safe, healthy, and educated. You look at for example, the crisis in child welfare, where we don't have enough social workers to deal with the increased number of kids who are in foster care or crisis situations due to the opioid epidemic. The caseload is just unmanageable. Or you take an example like unemployment insurance, where our technology was so antiquated and our staffing so low, we weren't able to handle the rush of claims as it hit. So we need to, we have this surplus now, again, because of the American Rescue Plan Act, and we need to use that to provide relief to people who are still suffering through the pandemic, and to reinvest in these services. Let's put money back into education, healthcare, human services, things that have been cut. Put people to work. Provide raises to the public service, so we can actually be competitive in attracting and retaining the talent we need to provide these important services. There's an opportunity to do that like we haven't had in well over a decade in the next legislative session. My fear, however, is that the legislature will give it away in tax cuts, which they passed an enormous amount of tax cuts in the last session, or otherwise just sort of lock it away and not use it to reinvest in our state and in our budget. I don't know if they will do that, but it is a concern that I have, and that I think we should all be concerned about as we go into the legislative session. Now's the time to reinvest. Now's the time to turn the corner on the pain that we've been living through really since the Great Recession, but certainly in the pandemic. Come out of this pandemic stronger, with a more robust economy, a more equitable economy. And the way that we do that is put dollars out into these core investments in public services that are so important.
That is, fantastic advice, and I really hope that our GOP supermajority is listening. I'm sure you'll find ways to share your analysis with them. But I did want to underscore one thing. Really, you were talking about the crisis in our social services and the fact that our are just the overworked social workers, right, with amazing caseloads. An amazing piece done in Lexington Herald Leader this last week that pointed out just people are leaving in droves because they're paid a pittance of what they're worth. The importance of that job is immeasurable again, but I do think that when you can make twice as much as a bartender, that's a problem, and it shows how our government is valuing our people. So I think across the board raises in that area is absolutely an investment that needs to be done. The amount of people that we need to hire to do that role, and to be able to give them the space to do it well, as opposed to just overwhelming them. It was heartrending to read that article and to see what people are going through as they try to help our the folks who need the help the most. And again, we're number one in the nation in child abuse, and this is a critically important resource to help defray that. And of course, the quote from a Republican politician was that, well, if it's not performing, maybe we just need to cut it. like No, that's the opposite of what you need to do if it's not performing well. You need to give it the resources to take care of our people. So again, I don't want to bog you down in politics, Jason Bailey. I know you're nonpartisan, but I do think that it's really important that people get the facts when they make these decisions about what policies they support and promote. And I want to thank you for bringing so many facts to us tonight. Absolutely helped inform our audience, and we appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Sure thing. All right, so we're going to move on now. We got our action events calendar. We've got, because a lot of cool stuff is happening. And I think it's unassigned. Who wants to do the action events calendar tonight? Kimberly, you want to do it? Nate, you want to do it? Who's doing it?
I can do it if I can find it. Oh, image. Okay. To the folks who are watching, we work off this document, so if you lose your attention for half a second, you're totally lost. So this call to action is about May Suramek. So Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, KFTC, has endorsed May Suramek for the 89th district special elections, and of course she was a guest of ours just recently. And KFTC has done the following. They've launched phone banks and canvassing efforts to support her effort to win in November, just around the corner. So they're going to be having canvassing Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays in the 89th district. So we're going to share a link for that from mobilize.us. In addition to knocking on doors with your mask on safely, they're having phone banks every Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 4. We'll share a link for that as well. And then May's campaign itself, separate from the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, is doing phone banking every day from 5 to 8. Now, that sounds like really good hours. People are home and you're more likely to hit somebody. So what you should do, my friends, is head to her Facebook page or website to volunteer. And let me spell that name. May Suramek is Maesuраmek. Google that and get yourself phone banking right now. The other thing we have to talk about is Fair Maps. LWV is helping inform the redistricting process by a transparent electoral district mapping project and a series of virtual town halls that explain their maps and the redistricting process. The next one is happening tomorrow, October 21st in Lexington. It's going to be from 7 to 8:30 Eastern Standard, and this is a virtual thing. So please register for the LWV League of Women Voters. I finally figured it out. You're good, Nate. Register for that event at bit.ly/Lex Fair Maps. That's bit.ly/capital LEX, capital FAIR, capital MAPS. And then there's another one happening in 2 weeks, Tuesday, the 2nd of November. For Northern Kentucky, that's going to be in 6:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And I won't go through the you can go to lwvky.org and find out about that one. And then come to our party. Help turn Kentucky purple. You, my friend, are invited to Progress Kentucky's Shillito Shindig. I can't say this. I should have practiced. It's at the. Aaron, help me out. How do you pronounce this park? Shillito? Anybody?
I think it's Shillito.
Shillito.
I call it the Shillito Shindig. I don't call it that. I mean, Amber came up with that name. So that's
Shillito. They call the park Shillito. Okay, so please get back on track. Shillito Shindig, sponsored by Indivisible. We want to help get the team together and share plans and strategize to retire Rand Paul in 2022. So you, please join us. We will provide some food and political fun with a great crew. When's it going to be? I'm so glad you asked. Sunday, October 31st. That's Halloween, noon to 3 p.m. at Shillito Park in Lexington. And that's over by the mall, shelter number 1.
You know what? And, what's scary on Halloween, Nate?
Your costume?
You know what's scary? The thought of 6 more years of Rand Paul. That to me is terrifying and frightening. So that's why we're doing it on Halloween. But we'll wrap up by 3 so everyone can go do the trick or treating. We're not starting until noon. If you trick or treated the night before, then you can recover from all your candy. But yeah, it should be a good time.
Should be a good time.
It'll be a good time. Come on out. It'll be fun.
Okay, couple more. You're being so patient and good to us, and you'll be rewarded with many good things that you can do to help the Commonwealth. So the Kentucky Democratic Party has launched, it's called Ready to Run, number 2, run, a new training program for prospective candidates and staff envisioned to provide the building blocks to win Democratic campaigns right here in Kentucky. There will be a few sessions, but a training session is tentatively planned when? November 13th to 14th in Louisville. So you thought about running maybe, but you could use a little help in getting your act together. Well, Kentucky Democratic Party is here for you. So learn more or apply at kydemocrats.org/ready to run, spelled ready, READY, number 2, RUN. And finally, Rand Paul. Who was just talking about Rand Paul? So we, Progress Kentucky, have launched a petition to urge the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure to investigate unethical and dangerous medical practice from none other than Dr., air quotes, Rand Paul. We're closing in on our signature goal. We're very, very close to 500 signatures, at which point, when we get the 500 signatures, we're going to file that sucker. Then it's going to be an official grievance with the board and hopefully get Senator Dr. Paul's Kentucky medical license suspended. Doesn't that sound awesome? Yes. So if you think that's dangerous and irresponsible to instruct people to get arrested instead of following mask rules, yes, this man actually said that, please sign and share our petition. You can find it at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/investigate Dr. Paul. And that's spelled capital I, investigate, all the rest is lowercase, Dr., capital D-R, Paul, capital P-A-U-L. All right. And look for it in the show notes. And I think that's it.
I think you're right. I think that's it. I think it's on to the lovely Kimberly to close us out.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm thinking about running for Congressman Yarmuth's seat.
Nice. Throw your hat in the ring. Let's do it.
No, I will not do that. No. I like the behind the scenes action. That's where the real action is. Right. But I want to tell everybody next week on the Kernels of Truth, we're going to talk about the impressive labor organizing going on right now with John Deere, Kellogg's, and Kentucky's own Heaven Hill Bourbon. Organizers are calling this Striketober. I like that. Striketober will bring back labor good troublemaker Matt Ally to share his insights about why labor is kicking butt and taking names right now. Did I pronounce his last name correctly, Aaron?
Well, Ally? I think it's Ally.
Ally? Well, he's an ally.
He is an ally. That's for sure.
Ally. Okay. I'll have it right by next week, okay? But I want to let everybody know right now that Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4, is affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, which is otherwise known as CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. And also some graphic content that you've seen today comes to us by way of Couchfire Media. Couchfire Media ignites multi-camera, live stream, educational, and commercial video production content. For more information, they can be found at www.couchfiremedia.com. Production this evening was by the wonderful, great, and beautiful Miss Annabelle Nagel, our own social media chair for Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much, Annabelle, for volunteering to help get our live stream out to the people. Annabelle, you do a great job each and every week. And so I got a pair of glasses coming to you, girl. I need your address, okay? Also, the Jones Report, which is my show, Kimberly Cecil Jones, you get it. We're doing some restructuring and we're doing some things. Mike Breuer has been on the road. Betsy Foster has been doing some things in the Democratic Party. And I've been focusing a lot of my attention here on Kernels of Truth. But we will be coming back shortly and you will be the first to know. Before I even put it on any social media, my Kernels of Truth people will know first. Okay, so you can look for that. National and international news is usually what we deal with. Now, I want to thank Nate, Mr. Orshan, for the theme music that you heard today. He's wonderful and great. We're still going to get together and get a song. And also, I'm hoping that he will do a song for me too, for my news in threes. I hope I put him on the spot. So don't miss our weekly live stream. You know, if you want to catch up on something else, you can see it on Facebook, honey. Don't worry, you can rewatch the shows and see our source links on Facebook and YouTube. And if you prefer not to see me, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you didn't want to see me, I can know why you don't want to see Aaron or Nate. But audio podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, I'm wrapping it up, you guys. Every week I say the same thing. You know what's up. Do something nice for somebody this week. Not only will it make you feel good, it'll make someone else feel good too. Just a smile. Give somebody a phone call. Don't just text them. Call them up. Let them hear your voice. They haven't heard from you for a long time. So until then, same bat channel next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Kernels of Truth. See you then.